Thank you guys for coming this afternoon. I'm really excited to moderate this panel today with these wonderful panelists that we have. My name is Fallon Brewer. I'm a genetic counselor at UAB, which is in Birmingham, Alabama. And my role with HD is helping individuals who are interested in undergoing predictive testing for HD. So this is my first HDSA convention to attend, and it has been fabulous, and we will continue that trend. So the primary focus of today's panel, obviously, as it's titled, is to test or not to test. And what we're referring to there is the predictive genetic testing. So individuals at risk for HD, as you're aware, may choose to find out their status, they may choose not to, or they may be undecided for some period of time or indefinitely. And so the panelists today will tell their story and give background about their journey. So I will turn it over to them to start. Also for the questions, we want it to be very interactive and conversational. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A in the app. We will take those. We'd like to intersperse those during the talk and not wait till the end for all questions. So feel free to please engage, and we'll be doing that for the virtual members as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Brendan.
Check 1, 2.
Sure. So my name's Brendan. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. I'm 25. I'm from California. My mother has Huntington's disease. My aunt, also my uncle. My grandpa passed away from it in 2007. My mom and her dad, my papa, had the same CAG. So hello. So they both had the same CAG, and my mom's towards the later stages in life, but yeah, my mom, uncle, and aunt all have it. I had tested negative. My sister still needs to test. She's 23. She's not deciding to test just yet, but I'm totally standing by that because it's her decision, you know. Yeah, HD's been in my life ever since I could remember. Me and my sister have been going on walks, and always been super open about it, you know what I mean? And I love being at convention.
Hi everyone, my name is Gia Minoni. I am 27 and I live on Long Island in New York. The on part's very necessary. It's not in Long Island. So I am currently at risk for Huntington's disease. My mom had Huntington's disease. She passed away in 2016, so it's been 6 years. I have known about Huntington's disease, I want to say I was told 5th grade, which would make me 10 years old. So it's always been in my life. My family is not keeping it behind closed doors. We're very open about it, have been ever since we found out about it. I have a younger sister who is also at risk. She's raising her hand. She needs so we're both living at risk, kind of like Brendan said, supporting one another in our own individual journeys of being at risk.
Hi, I'm Allie. I found out about HD in my family about, I think I was 14. My dad kind of sat me down and told me the whole really fun family history. And I had decided that I thought I needed to get tested as soon as I turned 18. It took me a little bit of time to actually do it, but I did end up testing, and I did test positive for HD. So any questions that you want to have about the process or dealing with any of these results, please feel free to send them in, because we want this to be a conversation, not just talking out at you guys. So, yeah.
You. So I'll start with a question, and it really is applicable for any of you guys. What factors influenced your decision to test or not to test?
Do you want me to start? Yeah. So for me personally, the anxieties of not knowing the status and not being able to plan ahead. I'm a planner. I'm a bit type A. Was just not. It was just not doable for me personally. I knew that I was going to need to know, and I was living in Iowa City, still am actually, where our COE is. So I literally could walk to go get tested, which was great. We have a really great team there that made the whole process really smooth, and I knew that they were going to be there to support me. My family was very supportive of everything. My roommates and my really close friends were. So, yeah, just the anxieties and fear of the unknown, and then the great support system that I had were two huge factors.
So with mine, it's kind of pretty much the same thing. I just felt like I needed to know. And it's weird because I always kind of just prepared for the worst, like everybody pretty much does, And I wish I just took at least a week to at least think, what if I did turn out negative, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't ready for it. But I needed to know, so I had to get tested right when I was 20, I believe. So it took me a little while, but yeah, that was mainly mine too.
So there's a couple factors that kind of tie into why I'm still untested at 27. Some of them being family related. Like I said, I have a sister, and it is, in my opinion, pretty difficult to test when you have siblings, because you always have them at the forefront of your mind, especially if you're the first sibling to test. You're always going to be worrying about everyone else. I'm also very type A, like Allie, which is shocking to me that it hasn't accelerated me forward to wanting to just solve this and get an answer. But it took some time for me to kind of realize, I think what it was for me mainly was I was a caregiver my whole life. I really wasn't thinking about me in the HD situation. It was more all right, my mom is my primary focus, and she's the one with HD, not factoring myself into it. I knew I was at risk the entire time, but I never really sat down and said, hey, you matter in all of this. So I didn't start thinking about me and HD until my mom passed. So now that she's been gone for 6 years, I am kind of playing with all right, when do we test? Because now we're thinking about future planning and where do I want to go, and lots more is factoring in now than it was before. I did want to test as soon as I turned 18. Anyone who knows me and my story knows this already. I was dead set on testing at 18, and my dad said, I'm scared, so how about I just pay for your first tattoo and we'll call it a day? And I said, you've got it. So I got an HD tattoo and didn't think about it, kept postponing when I want to get tested and stuff. But back then, nothing was really factoring into why I wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it, didn't put much thought into it. And then as that time passed and I thought more, I kind of realized I'm just not ready yet.
I think you all hit, so many topics there that are so common in individuals deciding to test or not. One in that, certainty is better than uncertainty for some, whether it's the answer that you're hoping for or not. And then for others, having that definitive or definite answer, making sure that the timing is right is so crucial too, because it's such a personal decision and can't be undone once it has been done. So thank you guys for sharing that.
We have a few questions already.
Perfect.
Do you want me to show you one?
Whatever works best.
the first one.
All right. So this one is for Brendan and Allie. How did your test result impact your life and future planning?
So, like I said earlier, I wasn't necessarily ready to test negative, but because everyone prepares for the worst, so I was just ready for that. And being negative gives me like the assurance that I already know I can live my life, and I'm lucky enough to do that without having to worry about Huntington's later and everything else that comes with it. But that still doesn't mean the fight's over, because I still have so many people, like everyone in here, that I love so much, and my family, and it sucks because they're survivor's guilt, you know what I mean? I still deal with that, and it's one of like the biggest things that I struggle with, but there's hope, you know what I mean? We're still all here together right now. Yeah, just trying to still live my best life regardless of my outcome, and that was what I was going into it with, but just really didn't think I was going to be negative.
Let Allie answer, and then we'll come back to the survivor's guilt because that's such a huge piece as well.
Yeah, so I had quite a bit of time to prepare because at that time the process with HDSA was like having 2 counseling visits before you actually got your results for that 3rd visit. So I had a lot of conversations with my the psychiatrist I was meeting with through this process, and she had had me think through what is it going to be like to be positive, what is it going to be like to be negative, and then the scariest one for me actually is what is it going to be like if you're in the gray zone and you still don't know. And so I had a lot of time to prepare, but I still didn't quite know what my reaction was going to be, and I kind of surprised myself. I didn't really react much. I had the envelope, opened it, read the thing. I think my heart stopped for probably a good 5 seconds, though, reading that result. And then just kind of was like, all right, that's my reality. Moving to the next thing. And so it's still kind of what I'm doing now. Definitely there's still some really hard days where it hits me that's in my future. But I kind of am a little stubborn and refuse to let it totally rule my life. I'm going to go get the degree I want, get the job I want. That's not stopping. The only thing that may have changed a little bit is my views on family planning. It kind of, the gene is dying with me and my family. I've made that decision whether I adopt in the future or other options. I don't know, but that was the only major life choice that I think was really shaped by my result.
Did you feel like that was something that you knew through working with a psychiatrist ahead of time that you saw yourself leaning towards, or was that something that kind of evolved as you processed your result?
No, that was something I had kind of already figured out. I also am not personally I've never super desired to have kids anyway, so that wasn't really a life-shattering, altering decision. But
Thank you. I'll take another one. Knowing what you know now, is there anything you would go back and change about your testing process, either the process itself or how you prepared? So for Brendan or Allie.
think about that one.
Yeah. Can you say it again?
So thinking back to the process, is there anything that you would have changed or wish you would have known, I think, done differently throughout the process?
Like you said, there was 3 different meetings, and during the second one, I believe, they had told us to actually just look at it as if you were going to be positive and how you would have felt, and then the same thing with the negative. And I was just ready for the worst, so I didn't really take as much time, but going through with it, I wish I did, and that definitely would have helped a lot more. Anything else besides that, that's the main thing, to be honest.
Was there anything in your process that wasn't helpful or?
Oh no, they were super helpful with just making sure I was gonna be okay with it, and I was ready, you know what I mean? And they were super helpful, yeah.
Allie as well?
I can't really think of anything I would have wanted to change in that process. Going through the people that are experts, I think, is pretty crucial. Someone that already knows what HD is, they know which questions to ask you. I know it can be kind of tempting just to go through like a family doctor that you might be comfortable with, but I highly recommend going through the experts for sure. They kind of have this process down to a science, and they know all the things that you might need to really go over. Yeah, I don't think there was really anything I would change about it.
Kind of piggybacking on that for all three of you guys, were there specific resources or places or people that you turned to as you were making your decision? And what did you find helpful that you might want to share with others who are thinking about that? Or even in the situation of not testing, certainly there's information and resources that you've, what kind of, HDSA website, social media pages, what types of resources and information, if any, helped guide your decision?
Don't do what I did. Don't think you can do the whole thing alone. The psychiatrist I worked with actually forced me to bring someone to my results visit, and I didn't want to. I wanted to do the whole thing by myself, and they really recommended, having things in place. Like, I think we had a really nice dinner planned with me and all my friends on the day so that I had something to look forward to and stuff like that. But yeah, don't do it alone. I do not recommend.
I can at least build on that too, because they actually told me too that you need a support person there for when you get your results. And I had chosen my girlfriend at the time, and I thought that was the best person. And a week before I got my test results, she broken up with me, and I was like, oh no, like I'm not gonna be able to take it, you know what I mean? And I actually had my best friend, like my brother Matt. He came in, and I'm so happy it was him instead of her, because she wasn't supposed to be in my life, I don't think. So that's also another thing, making sure you definitely have that support person that you know is gonna be there for sure, like forever.
I think that's such a good point too. In a lot of centers, that is, it's on, and is it, no, I'll speak louder.
So you could take this one.
You want me to do that? That one I'm still on. I think that's such a great point, because most centers do strongly encourage, I think required's a harsh word, because there are unique circumstances where that may not be the case for everyone, but strongly encourage that individuals being tested have a support person there who's also not someone at risk. So having someone who's totally invested in that person and not have any kind of, not personal connection, but, bringing another family member who's also at risk can influence how that session goes too, because they're worried about their loved one being tested. They're also worried about themselves, or thinking about that and how it may affect them. So definitely that's something we talk about a lot in the genetic counseling session before the process gets going, is that be thinking of who that support person, who you want to use as that support person, because it is such a key component.
If you just want to show you there's some questions that you.
Perfect.
Yeah, so this might be just bigger to see.
Yes, great.
And there's a few that go into the support system and the process.
Great. Okay. Well, I will take a look at these. So this one is for Gia. Have you thought about who you plan to have with you for your support team? That don't you? Like, where are you looking?
Yes, and it's changed over time because, like I've said, I've kind of gone from I'm getting tested at 18, and obviously who you're close with at 18 sometimes isn't who you're close with when you're 27. So the people that you can lean on and they're there for your support change. So who I would have chosen at 18 is not necessarily the same person I would choose now. And kind of answering the question that Allie and Brendan answered beforehand, to find my resources and kind of help me through whether or not I want to test or not. I've always found this exact session the most informative and like changing for me. My first ever convention was in 2015 Baltimore. So I went to that first session. It was my first ever time like really coming to anything that on this large of a scale, and just listened to the same exact thing, the positive, negative, and at risk. And that had always kind of helped form my decisions because it seemed so like clear cut. Like people just felt like they knew when it was the time for them. And that's why I feel like I'm still not there yet. I feel like I would maybe have this epiphany, like, oh, I know now. Now's the time. But while I think maybe that happens for some, it doesn't happen for all. What was the original question? I went off track. I apologize. Oh, who I would bring. Thank you, sister. That's why I went to the convention side of things, because coming to these conventions and meeting people who have already tested, I feel are individuals that I feel I could lean on for the most support. I do know that everyone is going through their own journey, so it might be like difficult for someone to assist me on my own journey, but at the same time, I have like hope and faith that these are the people that would really be the ones that I could lean on because they know exactly what it's like. And like the social workers through HGSA and stuff, like have to shout her out, but HDO's former Chandler, I've always thought of her as like, that would be maybe one of my go-to people because she's just supported me from day one. So that's kind of where my head's at.
And to piggyback on that one as well, someone asked, how might the announcement this morning about the new staging system and near-term potential for trials for those in stage 0 and 1 impact the decision to test? So that's a little more on the spot as far as processing, or I don't know if you've had a chance to attend that talk, but with knowing that there may be trials that someone who is gene positive but not symptomatic, does that influence your decision at all?
I would say it does because they're and forgive me, Allie's our research girl. She's able to break down the things that I can't always comprehend. But so props to her. But I think with all that's, coming out and what we're learning and, the science, like I feel like we've never been so close, never been so supported by science that it's almost like it would give me kind of more of a push to get tested if I knew that these trials were looking good. It's always good to, understand the science as best as you can to kind of help, push you forward with testing. I don't think it would be the sole, contributor to me, putting on that cap and being like, all right, we're doing this. I think I would need to be more set in my relationships and feel confident in myself to make the decision rather than it really relying on any trials or anything like that yet.
Great, thank you. Allie, this question is for you. Would you mind sharing the process kind of from start to finish, the steps that you went through for testing, including after testing and the results visit, what kind of follow-up has been initiated or kept by the center that, or by the process that you went through?
Yeah, so I know they've changed it just a hair bit at this point, but my testing process had the 3 visits. So the first one I came in, it was just meeting with the genetic counselor and with the psychiatrist. We really went through, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? How are you doing with this? And they sent me home with homework, which I was already in school, but it's fine. And so the questions that I wasn't able to answer in that appointment was the ones that they sent me home with. And they were like, we actually want you to really think about this, think through these things, and we're going to ask you about it for your second visit, just to make sure that you truly are ready for this, that you're prepared for these results, whatever they may be. So second visit was, basically that of, checking in, on those questions and really running through. And, they did directly ask me, like, are you ready for testing, before they did the blood draw, which they did at that second visit. And then I had to wait a month, which honestly, that really sucks. But that's just how long it takes to process through these blood samples. But I actually scheduled it in a way that I was home for winter break over that time. So I was not in Iowa City for that month and walking past the hospital thinking about it constantly. So that was one of the things that I kind of did to prepare for this results visit, was not be there. And then my results visit, I did, I think like a week or two after I got back to school, and my stepmom drove down and we went to the visit together, because Peg kind of made me bring someone, but it's also because I have a relationship with Peg outside of testing, so she knew that I needed it. And yeah, I kind of already touched on, getting that envelope, and the other people don't see your results before you do. So you're opening that envelope, it's sealed. So they do not know your test results before you get to know your test results. But they're there for the support, which is really cool. Because, whatever that little line says, positive, negative, whatever your CAG repeat is, it's going to hit you in that moment. So really having that support was super crucial. And then having those plans with friends and stuff later to kind of take your mind off things, I think was really, really important too. Because it was just something to kind of like ground me back to reality of like, nothing truly has changed besides my knowledge. My DNA is my DNA. Like, I've had this my entire life. So that, like, thinking about having that thing at the end of the day was actually what, like, really brought me back into the moment and, like, let me start processing through stuff. And then what was the other half of the question? It was really long.
The follow-up after your results,
Follow-up
like
after
have they
results,
kept
okay.
engaged, followed up? What does that look like?
Gotcha. So I'm pretty actively involved in research at my COE, and so most of my follow-up has been through research, not so much like the clinical side or any of that. But they gave me all of the information. If I wanted to get into the COE, if I wanted to follow with them, they highly recommend doing a baseline visit well before you think you would ever be symptomatic, so that they have data to compare to, which I have not done at this point, but I remember it, it's in the back of my mind, and I know who I can contact for that. So just because of I'm 24 and I have a pretty low CAG, so I know I've got plenty of healthy years left. I haven't needed to utilize those resources yet, but because I'm connected with research, I still know who to contact, and I know how to get in touch with them for any of that type of stuff.
Perfect. And you mentioned kind of in the start of that the process now is even changed since you went through it, and someone sent a question for me as well of speaking to how the current testing process is different from in the past. And there definitely have been changes, mainly to make it more feasible, less restrictive, less barriers for individuals who are interested in predictive testing. So in an older model of testing, everything was in person, required multiple visits. A lot of individuals don't live very close necessarily to these centers of excellence, and so just getting there, gas, time off of work, time off for their support person to come with them, cost, all of those things add up to obstacles. And, the stance was if someone gets to the point where they've made the decision that they want to test, we don't want those obstacles or barriers to be in the way. Some of them are innate and they're going to happen, but how can we reduce those as much as possible? So I believe it was in 2013, so even pre-COVID, there was a lot more of a push for telehealth, telephone, telemedicine visits, whatever you could do without having the patient in the office was what we all tried to, or I shouldn't say all, many tried to move towards. So for example, before 2013, all genetic counseling sessions were in person. we changed that to a telephone visit. And then with COVID, telemedicine, there are some portions that you just have to be there. So you can't, doing the neurologic exam, doing the blood draw, there's certain, and doing the results are always in person, but we do try to minimize the number of in-person visits to cut down on those barriers to get to a center and make sure that someone's being tested by the appropriate person and not just going to their PCP because they're local, even if they don't know how to facilitate testing. So, let's see. This is a question for everyone. What has been the most frustrating and also most supportive comments and behaviors from family and friends regarding your testing? Any takers?
So the first thing, shout out to
I
them
don't know what
next
they're
door. Oh, that's who's next to us. So the first thing that came to my mind was the most frustrating. So might have to circle back on the most supportive, because I feel like through this journey, you'll come to find that there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions on what your decision is. And as someone who is still at risk, I find that many people feel that they need to insert themselves into my situation and pretend like they're me and pretend that they have to make this decision too, which they never will have to. So I've gotten a lot of, oh, if I were you, I would just test already. Or, and I've said this in my previous session yesterday as well, like, I'm 27, so people get nervous when you're like reaching 30 and not married and have kids already. So I've got a lot of people in my life who say like, how could you just not know? Like if it were me, I would need to know. And I'm always just like, all right, yeah, I get it. If it were you, but it's never gonna be you, so you'll never actually like feel what it's like to live fully understand from the age of 10. Like, you're making that decision because the age range that I get this comment from, it's anyone from the same age as me all the way up to, like, seniors that will say this. So I just stand there and I'm like, but you're making this decision as, like, a 55-year-old saying that to me right now. But you weren't 10-year-old me caregiving and witnessing this disease firsthand and going through the motions and watching the person who birthed you pass away in front of your eyes and going through hospice care, having to get all these things done. And so you don't get to choose that for me. You don't get to say to me, well, if I were you, because you really never will be me. And that's always the most frustrating thing I've come across, because what do you say to someone when they say that to you? Like, do you just shrug it off? Like, because it's people that, I've come to find that it's sometimes people that are closest to you and might also be struggling with the fact that I'm at risk, which is understandable, but at the same time, that makes it even harder to, comprehend that it's actually being said by people that care about you as well. So supportive I'll have to think about, but that's frustrating for sure on my end.
With support, at least, it's always good to have people that are happy for you that you're negative, because nobody wants to deal with it. Like, it's the worst disease in the world. So what was frustrating was also, in a way, it was a little frustrating too, just people saying oh, I'm so happy for you, but deep down I was just I can't take it away from everyone in my family, everyone that's dealing with this shit. So, sorry. And I just wish I could take it away from everybody, just bottle it up and put it in me and take it away from them, and just so I have to deal with it, and I'll do it in a heartbeat, but support, we're all here right now because of this, so I'm so grateful for that. This is my 4th convention. I went to Baltimore, Chicago, LA, and then I had missed the last 2 years, so I really needed this. just seeing all the faces again, you know what I mean? Like, relearning the science, hearing about the new research that's going on, and still having hope, because sometimes, especially with COVID, like, we all just got caught up in our own thing and kind of lost track of how to stay positive going through it, you know? Support, there's endless with us, to be honest.
Let's see. One of the most supportive comments I think I got was the day I got my results. I went back to my dorm room, and my roommate, still one of my best friends, she's amazing, had written me a little note that basically just said, like, it's actually, I have it upstairs. I should have brought my wallet down. I keep it in my wallet. And it just said, like, no matter your results, I love you, is basically the gist of the whole thing. And, like, yeah, I broke down and cried when I read that. And I still pull it out, and, like, the edges are fraying at this point. I think I need to laminate it. But that's, that little, like, that littlest gesture really can mean a lot. So I think that was that was definitely the most supportive comment I got, was like, whatever it is, like, you're you. Like, we still love you and everything like that. And then, even when you do test, people have opinions on whether or not you should have. So one of the things I've literally told someone when they tried to give me their opinion, like, oh, well, I don't, if I were you, I don't know that I would have tested. And I just look them dead in the eye and go, are you sure? Because they've never had to think through whether or not they actually would get tested. And every time I've done that, that person has kind of just, like, taken a step back and, like, oh, well, I guess I don't know. I'm like, correct.
Great.
Did you think it was supportive? Okay.
I guess after hearing Brendan and Allie speak on their support of it, just kind of came to me that I think for me, it's not necessarily like one thing that I've heard that's supportive, but I would just say I jumped head first, like, into advocacy and getting involved, and I think the most supportive thing for me has always been getting people to kind of join my HD train. So, like, helping people understand what I'm going through, getting them on the same page as me, trying to recruit them to get involved with me. So just having, like, people who can understand that they don't understand and can't make that decision for me, but want to kind of tag along. And, even if it's just going to a Team Hope walk with me and experiencing that for the first time, like, I think that's the most supportive thing for me, is having people who, even if it's just that one time for like 4 hours, they want to come and learn, and then I never see them again. That means more to me than anything.
Sorry, working out a technical glitch. Another question for all of you guys. How has your view on romantic relationships or future plans for that changed based on your decision to, either your result or decision to not test?
So, regarding relationships, because I'm negative, I won't honestly have to worry about passing it on to my kids. And that's a huge thing, because I do want kids. And it's great that they can grow up and not even have to deal with it. I almost want to have kids, like, immediately, just so they can see my mom at least, you know what I mean? But she's towards the later stages, so I'm chilling on that right now. Like, I can definitely wait to have kids, but I also can't wait, you know what I mean? Because just having your own little, like, son or daughter would be awesome, you know? But for them to actually, like, see my mom, I think it's already, like, too late, you know? What was the main question again, so I could get
Just
back?
how views have changed. I know you mentioned too, originally your support person was a significant other, so clearly y'all had conversation. Do you mind sharing kind of how you brought that up with her, and maybe things that went well, or that maybe in hindsight you might do differently next time?
Just not talk to her for that first time ever.
The curse
Just
word
having
totally
my best
gone.
friend was great, but regarding her, we talked about it, and she was pretty supportive, but she just didn't fully understand, you know what I mean? Being someone that's not actually affected by HD or like has someone in their family that has it, it's hard for them to just kind of get that perspective on trying to understand what we go through, and because there's obviously so much that goes with it. It's not just like, oh, my dad's sick, like, you know what I mean? It's like an everyday, there's so much that goes with it. So she was pretty supportive, but yeah.
I'm not really the right person for this question, but that's all right.
You don't-
views on
We have others we can move on to if you prefer.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you do anything about life insurance or long-term care insurance before, for you guys who've tested before you've tested? Or Gia, at this point, even considering that, that would certainly be applicable as well.
Yes, I did. My dad, when he still worked, he was a financial planner and did certain insurance-y things. They're way over my head. But he kind of knew how to navigate that and what to do with that. So I've actually had a life insurance policy on me since I was born, I think. And it kind of like, it's one of the ones that like grows with you as you get older. And so we increased it before I got tested, just in case that could be a future complication. I don't think I have long-term.
Did you find that process of adding to it was difficult or complex, or was it fairly straightforward for you?
It was straightforward for me
Because
because
your
my
dad.
dad was able to like walk me through the process.
Sure.
So yeah, just like really working with an expert, I would recommend, because that stuff gets confusing really quickly. But yes, I would recommend, like that was one of the things that my genetic counselor had really talked through with me, was these are going to be things that, depending on the outcome of this, test, can be difficult to get a hold of in the future. So, really think through, and if you can, put this into place now.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, and making sure you have an expert that pretty much goes to you and breaks it down all the way and shows you, like, you are going to have to worry about this, and make sure you don't just brush it off, because it may not be happening now depending on what your CAG is and how much later it actually happens, but it needs to be set in stone. So they were just like, make sure you're ready and you know how to pretty much handle it all.
So like I said, I was basically planning on testing at 18, and then that never happened. So coming to these conventions, I had learned how important it is to kind of get those documents kind of in place prior to testing. So I actually do have a life insurance policy already. I've had it since I'm 21. It was right before my mom passed, which was, I guess, lucky on my end, because I didn't have to say I had a deceased parent and then have them ask another whole realm of questions. But being someone who was at risk answering like all those questions, it was kind of intimidating, because I'm just like, all right, I know why I'm getting this life insurance policy, but the people on the other end of the phone don't, and I'm not going to let them in on why I'm doing it. So it's kind of weird to be answering those questions internally, knowing like you're preparing for something that could change your life completely. But yeah, I do have it set up because I had always kind of been prepared to test, but like I've said over and over, it's just not the right moment for me. But I do have it in place, so when I am ready to test, I already have like that one piece already set, so I don't have to stress over that.
Right. I think it's definitely a struggle for patients, but also for providers. I know I get asked a lot, are there certain companies that are better than others? Which ones do you recommend? And because they're always changing, it's hard to create like a master list of, hey, these companies tend to fare better, and these always ask specifically, or these never ask. So I think that's where, you guys as a community can really be helpful in sharing your experiences, because even with, someone who doesn't have a financial planner as a dad can help navigate to say, oh, stay away from this, company or process, try to go towards this one. And all the policies are different from company to company. So that can be helpful too. Let's see, you guys have alluded a little bit already of kind of family dynamics and how this is talked about or not talked about. So someone asked, how has testing or not testing affected your relationship with your siblings or parents, or has it? You can only have so many tattoos, right?
Do you want to go in?
Sure. Yeah. So I am usually not thankful for this, but in this one case, I'm very thankful. I'm an only child. So there's no dynamic there that I have to worry about with siblings. As far as my parents, not a whole lot changed, because they pretty much knew from the age of like 16 that I knew I wanted to get tested, and so we had a lot of time to prepare. So yeah, that didn't really super change our dynamic. It was interesting to actually meet the side of the family that HD comes from for the first time at, I think I met them at 16 as well, because they do not talk about it. And it's very prevalent in that family. And yeah, I can't, from talking to some of my cousins to whatever degree they are at this point, and just their fear of testing because of that family dynamic, it really gave me a different perspective on what other people kind of have to consider. And for anyone that has that, that's tough. That's really tough. And I'm very blessed to not have had to directly experience that.
So it's almost like I wish I hadn't tested, only in the sense that, yeah, it's great that I'm negative, but at the same time, like I said, I want my sister to test, and she told me she wasn't ready, and I almost wish, I didn't, just so, I don't have to worry about me being the negative one, and if she came out positive, you know what I mean? So, me and her, it's just hard, you know? I'll always still be there for her. She'll still always be there for me, whether I was positive or negative. But it's just, yeah, I wish I was taking more time to see how I thought I would have reacted if I was negative. You know what I mean? Because it's not just oh, great. There's still so much more that goes with it. So if you are thinking about testing, just make sure you go ahead of that before going into it.
So I'm laughing because if you see my sister and I wandering around convention, you'll just kind of notice immediately how close we are. We're each other's shadows, for lack of a better phrase. We're very close. HD has only really brought our family closer, our immediate family. Like I said in the beginning, it's always been something we talked about. It's never been an elephant in the room. It's never been something we don't discuss openly. We've always tried to get other family members on the same page as us, and trying to educate them as much as possible. And if they don't want to learn, that's on them. But we still do our best to kind of get our family educated. Since my sister's at risk too, we have our own individual journeys with this, but we know that we're going to support each other no matter what. We are open about it, but since it is an individual choice, we don't always It's not like we're texting. Well, also for those that don't know, my sister lives in Florida with my dad, and I live in New York, so we have some distance between us at this point. So it's not like we're texting every single day, like, so what are your thoughts on testing? But when it does come up, if, our timelines are different, that's okay. Siblings don't have to test at the same time. I always had, like I said, 18 was my time. I really thought that was going to be it. But I always had in the back of my mind my sister, and I wanted her to have as much knowledge and information as she possibly could. So there was a point in time where my sister believed that, like, if I was the one who tested negative, that meant she was going to be positive. And I wanted to make sure that she had all the proper and correct information before I tested, because I didn't want her to, like, spin out on this frenzy thinking, like, the wrong way about it. So now that we're both adults and we fully, we've come, like, I think this is our 6th convention. We have all of our information, and, we kind of understand things in a different way, where I don't feel as afraid to test because I know she understands that it's 50-50 per person now. It's not, one or the other, but it is still like a pretty big factor. Always thinking about her. And then we do have my dad, who's the unaffected parent, and our relationship with him was, I would say, kind of rocky when our mom passed, because he grieved in a different way than we did, and for much longer than we did, but it has bounced right back. So we're still all very close.
Thank you. Just to read a comment before another question, the 3 of you are so very brave. Thank you for your openness and honesty. And I definitely second that, by getting up here and sharing your story and being open and honest, there's so many people who are, taking hope in that and learning from that and being able to use that as a support for them. So just again, to say thank you as we are still working through this panel. So Gia, there is a question for you. Does the fear of not knowing cause you to worry if a symptom like habit happens? For example, if you forget or stumble.
Story of my life. But I think that goes for really anyone at risk, because before you know, you don't know. So, any little twitch, whether it's my hand, my foot while I'm about to sleep, which happens to everyone, it used to spiral me. I used to go down the whole, list of things, or, am I moody because of HD, or is it you just having a bad week? So I would constantly, think, all right, and kind of how Brendan said, I think it's common to just prepare for the worst. You never put yourself in the shoes of, oh, I'm negative. You're just always thinking, well, it's going to be me, because there's no other way to slice it and dice it. So it's kind of, at this point, where I am now, and why I kind of feel like it's not my time to test, is because, like I said earlier, I had never put myself in HD when I was caregiving. But now that it's been 6 years that my mom has passed, I have been able to fully think about myself. And I could confidently say I've had, and it sounds weird to say out loud, the best 6 years of my life. I have never been more outgoing and out of my shell and confident in myself and happy and living my life for me. And I think that's what's stopping me from testing right now, because I'm on such a good ride of my life. I stopped living myself as at-risk Gia, 22 years old, at-risk Gia, 23 years old, and I started living Gia's 25, Gia's 26, Gia's 27. Take HD out of it, because I used to think about it morning and night. And once my mom passed, it allowed me to stop thinking about it morning and night and just live my life. So I think that's the main reason why I'm not ready to test, because I've just been on such a high. So yeah.
Thank you. Allie, do you have anything to add? I know you mentioned earlier with your repeat being low that it's not something that is imminent. Is that something that you've struggled with or thought about?
Off and on, absolutely. I think that's pretty normal. And I've even heard from some people that have tested negative that have said the same thing of like, they go to the place of like, my test results are wrong. So I think that's just a common thing to have in the community in general.
When it's such a part of your life, it's hard
Yeah,
to ignore.
yeah.
And Brendan, going back to you, I know you've mentioned survivor's guilt a few times and seem to have definitely had some ups and downs in processing the dynamic of, your negative result and your sister not having yet tested. What have you or how have you addressed that? Have there been things that the center you worked with helped with ongoing counseling, or are there things that you have found that help you process that, or?
I hadn't followed up with, because I tested at UC Irvine in California, and I hadn't followed up with them after that because it took a while to process, you know what I mean? And it's still, survivor's guilt is almost like every single day of my life. So like I said earlier, it's not always like sunshine and rainbows because you're negative, you know what I mean? Survivor's guilt literally just, it's always in the back of my head because every time I think about my mom or my sister, like, I always just know, like, I could be the only one still in my family that doesn't have it. And I am right now, technically. Besides because my mom, aunt, and uncle all have it, but there's 4 kids out of them, and my other aunt doesn't have it, actually. But, yeah, survivor's guilt is just a whole nother thing that you need to prepare for as well when it comes to just that whole thing.
And agree wholeheartedly. I know that's something we talk a lot about during the genetic counseling session. And people will look at you kind of like, you're crazy. What do you mean? Like, they don't realize what an impact it can be because, like you said, it's, you have to go into it knowing that both results are equally possible, and how you think you may process either one can be totally different once that result is in front of you. And so, a lot of times during the genetic counseling session, it will be spent around talking more about that and how would you process that. What kind of things have you done in the past for yourself that help, whether it be meditation or something to help process when those kinds of emotions and feelings can start to take over.
Yeah, well, one of the main things is just knowing that they're still here for me, all my friends and family, you guys, like, it's not like it's the complete end of the world, just because of that, like, it's a lot to deal with, so just make sure you take a chance at least to give yourself some time to prepare for that.
So there's a question about employment discrimination. Thank you all for sharing your stories. Does receiving a gene-positive test result open you up to employment discrimination? I'm happy to speak a little bit on that in general, and then if you guys have had personal experiences with that, please feel free to add. There are laws in place, both on a state and federal level, that help prevent against not only health insurance, but employment discrimination. But there are caveats and nuances to those rules. So employers with less than 50 employees do not have to abide by those. So working for, when thinking about career options, thinking about bigger companies, not, small self-employed businesses who may be exempt from those regulations certainly could be one way that future planning could be influenced. There's stories, unfortunately, where information does get in the wrong hands, and there have been cases where with health insurance or employment, that information has been used against individuals. But again, those protections are in place to help prevent against that. And then that also goes back to, the options for trying to keep privacy and confidentiality at the forefront with things like anonymous testing, which again has advantages and disadvantages, but the major advantage is it doesn't link back to you. So if that information got in the wrong hands, it's not under your name. Do any of you guys have personal experiences with any kind of employment issues, health insurance? I know we talked about life insurance already.
With employment, because I tested negative, I never had to talk to them about it. At least discrimination-wise, like, yeah, depending on what jobs, obviously, if you did have HD and where you are, like, they don't understand too, probably, all the way, that it could occur later in life, so some people, like, that don't know about HD would probably, yeah, just be like, oh, he's sick, or, like, that person's sick, like, they're not able to work a job. Like, it's messed up, obviously, but, have you had anything? No? That's good.
It doesn't necessarily have to do with like employment discrimination or anything, but something that has kind of irritated me, and I've definitely asked a bunch in the past at other conventions, is after my mom passed, I had a new primary care physician. And of course, you know, you're new to them and they have to ask you all those questions about your family history. And I stated that my mom had passed and they asked why. And then, you know, all medical records now are at the touch of your fingers on an app where you could like just see your whole chart after you leave. And I started realizing that they had put on my medical records like deceased mother, Huntington's disease. And that's frustrating to me because I feel like anyone who has access to my medical records now moving forward is going to know immediately if they're a doctor, they should know that HD is genetic. So when they read my chart, they're already going to know I'm at risk without me divulging that information. So that's always just kind of been a little under my skin. I've kind of thought about like, well, can I ask this doctor to remove it? Is that like fair to do? Is it, just, I don't know, not something I really want like put on my medical record per se.
I think that's also a key thing too when going through the process, since there is a protocol that centers follow, and not everyone goes through a center, number one, but even for those centers, there's such variability. Looking at the data from how things are documented, what costs are, number of visits. So, questions to keep in mind if you're in that position where you're considering moving forward, those are good things to check in with the team that you talk to even ahead of time to know before getting into it what will be documented and those sorts of things. So, on the topic of anonymous testing, a few people have asked, did or will you test anonymously? Why or why not? Or have you considered testing or did you consider testing anonymously?
I had not tested anonymously. I wish I did, just in case if it did come out positive. But they did ask me, and I should have said yeah, but because I'm negative, obviously it doesn't matter now. But they asked me about it too.
I did not test anonymously, but I honestly don't really regret it. The center that I went through is probably the center that I will continue to go to eventually in my life. So I want them to have that information at their fingertips. And like part of it was building the relationship with the COE that I will have to use at some point. And it's a COE like that my dad goes to. And so like I have personal relationships with his doctors, even though I don't go to his appointments. But at some point in the future, I probably will need to, as like he won't be able to keep track of what's going on quite as well. And my stepmom's fantastic. I love her so much. She just doesn't quite understand medical stuff super, super well, and I do. So building that relationship with my COE was just super crucial for me.
I would say for me being at risk, it's kind of a toss-up on which way I would test. I definitely need to gather more information on testing anonymously, I think, because I could honestly say, since I've kind of got away from my spiraling and thought less about testing, I haven't jumped into like doing as much research because I know I'm not necessarily ready yet to test. But part of me has always thought that maybe I won't test anonymously. That way, like, it sounds weird, but like that it could be tracked because my mom went through Columbia University, their Center of Excellence, and we have no record of my mom at all. So I don't know my mom's CAG number. Obviously, they took her blood many times to be, going there. But there's like no record of my mom. She was just like a number there. And being at risk, I know knowing my mom's CAG number really wouldn't do much besides if I test positive, tell me maybe the same track that I would be on. But sometimes it's weird to not know what my mom's CAG number is. So part of me thinks like, well, if she had not been known as, let's just say 0000, that I could have called up and asked like, hey, can you provide me this information at all, just to give me some peace of mind. So definitely a toss up for when it's my time to test though.
I think that's a great point. On the provider side, we always think, or I do anyways, of that as being a protection. I haven't thought of it as being a limiting factor. So that's really interesting, a really interesting point that you made.
And I have one more thought on that too. Research is pretty important to me, and to be able to be in certain trials, you have to have a test for it, and you have to have your name on the test to be able to do it. So that's just a factor to consider when you consider what route you would want to test. Is, in the future, would you want to actually have that official record for a drug trial or an observational trial that might require it?
Very good points. For Allie and Brendan, how spread out were your genetic counseling sessions, if you recall?
How what?
How spread out? I think they're asking for those who met with a counselor more than once. What was kind of the interval of time?
So I had, it was a month-long process, and then the first week, they pretty much told us how it was going to go, and then within 2 more weeks is when I had tested, and they gave me more time to process it and be ready for it, and then a month after that was when I got my results. That's how long it was.
Perfect. Someone has asked, how does anonymous testing look different from non-anonymous in terms of the process and results? So again, there's variability amongst centers. I know, personally speaking, the process is exactly the same. It's just when it comes time to submit the sample, the patient chooses a different name. At our center, we do ask them to pick a name with the same initials and use the same date of birth so that internally we can track who's who without it being, their real name. But again, there's variability amongst centers. So if that was an option that you were interested in, certainly ask on the front end, does that change anything at that center, or how does that change the process at all? So.
And I can elaborate on testing anonymously. Because you brought that up too when it comes to drug trials and all that, and you actually do have to put your name down. And I wish I did go through with it and still put my name down instead of testing anonymously. I still stand by it. I changed my mind.
Got it. You guys have touched a little bit on kind of support and regrets. Is there anything that you've thought of throughout the process that you would want to kind of pay it forward to pass on, as far as make sure to do this or don't, make sure not to do that. It is so different and personalized for everyone, but I think there are some overarching things that can be helpful or not helpful to many. So is there anything else I know we've got about 15 more minutes, but anything else that you guys can think of that would be helpful to share that you want to share?
Yeah, definitely making sure you have the right support person is super crucial, because if it was still that girl that I was talking to, just make sure if you're with someone, it's like your actual partner, that you've been with them for a while and they probably aren't going to be in your life for a while. Otherwise, just choose, because if you choose a family member, like saying someone's at risk, like that could be bad on them depending on how it goes too. So maybe just a best friend or someone you're insanely close with.
All right, so we've got some more questions coming in. One was to follow up on the anonymous testing route. Could you give your family your fake name, and could they track it? So certainly you could tell them what name that you tested under, but that information would not be released to anyone else without your approval and documentation. So it's really more of keeping that information as private as possible for that person, not necessarily other family members. They could choose, if you're, not to assume, but if you're openly dialoguing with your family member enough that they know you've used a different name, you may have shared your repeat number. And going back to Gia's point, that's usually the key piece of information that relatives are interested in if it's not available. So. Someone else posted, there's a new company, HD Genetics, that will offer testing from home. It will require at least one genetic counseling session and offer as many as needed. It's completely telehealth based and includes a saliva kit being sent to your home. Would you test that way? And what are your thoughts in comparison to going through a COE? Would you have rather done it from the comfort of your own home? I think you guys have touched on that a little bit already.
I think that would have, for me, been a terrible idea, because, well, I have a tendency to try to internalize everything, and I would not have thought through as much of the things that I needed to think through to truly make an informed decision, without actually sitting with a counselor face to face. I don't do well over telehealth though either. That's just not for me. If I can avoid it, I do much better being present with a person to go through things. And then also having that counselor also in the room with me when I got my results was very important to me and crucial for how I needed to process through the information. So yeah, for me, it would not be great for just my kind of natural tendencies to not include other people in decisions and supporting me,
Right.
which is what I really needed during that time.
Right.
I don't think necessarily, I can't even think back to before I did it, because I know my result now. It's amazing that you can even do that, to be honest. I might have back then. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Do you think you would now? Do you think obviously the events and the information shapes your
Yeah,
opinion?
the genetic counselors and just having all those people tell you everything that comes with it is super helpful. So if you had that as well and you're able to get it at home and then still have a support person, obviously, and not just do it by yourself, maybe then if you're super comfortable with it, yeah.
Right.
Would you?
I would say, just how you ended that, if it could be a mixture of the two, I would probably prefer it. I don't do well on telehealth either. I have been a social worker since 2020, and while it has, COVID has brought, to the surface, oh, we could do all this stuff virtually, and it's been like a great find in some industries. I prefer face-to-face. I think it kind of makes the situation seem more real. I think it's easier to kind of dissociate from what's right in front of you on a computer. But yes, you can't see it because I'm wearing like everything covered, but I do have a lot of tattoos. So no, I'm not afraid of needles because of the needle itself. I hate the feeling of giving blood. I am 27 and can still say that I walk to the lab and I'm like shaking in my boots and I'm telling the nurse like, oh, hi, it's just your typical 27-year-old baby here to give blood. So the thought of going through one of the hardest times of my life testing and then facing my fear of giving blood really freaks me out. I'm not gonna say it's the reason why I won't test, but it is like a little snippet of like, I don't want to go get my blood taken, and in that tube is going to be like my answer. Because like when you give blood for just like cholesterol and everything, you know it's going off to test your cholesterol and everything. But for some reason in my head, this tube is going off to tell my future freaks me out more than anything. So like having it just be saliva for me like makes a world of a difference. Yeah, or a swab, like sign me up for that. But I do think that I would prefer to go to a center of excellence. And lucky for me, I am a Stony Brook University alumni on Long Island, and they just became a center of excellence recently. So that's going to be my closest one, and I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone there and kind of like familiarizing myself. But yeah, if you could do the saliva there, I'm good.
I think that brings up a good point too, because not all labs offer both options. So again, being empowered if you're at the beginning of, the journey and making that decision is to know what the center or the practice that you're going through offers, because for some they may offer both. For some it may only be blood. I know we get asked a lot, are they equally accurate? And the answer is yes. There's not an increased chance for a false positive, say with a cheek swab or saliva sample. The downside can be is that obviously blood is the best source of DNA. When you do a saliva sample or a cheek swab, sometimes they don't get sufficient, like what they need, and so they may request a repeat specimen. And sometimes that in itself can cause anxiety of, oh, I already submitted it, and now a week later they say, oh, we need another sample. So again, if you know those things up front, you can be prepared for them. But if you don't know, that can cause some more anxiety as you're waiting.
Yeah, when they took my blood, I swear they took like 20 pounds. I was like, okay, you can stop. I was just looking at it like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like getting blood, but maybe.
Wait, how many tubes did it, guys?
Okay, it was one, but
One,
like,
thank you.
I don't want to say that bad, but still, like, I was like, okay, you can start.
Right.
I have
It was
Perception is reality, right? Were you going to add something?
But yeah, I think the most important thing is to know what's best for you. So, I said that wouldn't be a route for me. That doesn't mean it's not a route for someone else. So you just kind of have to know what you're going to be comfortable with and what route is going to be, what's going to be easiest for you. Like, what is going to make this process the least amount of painful it will be? Because, well, yeah, that'd be great. But I actually had to get my blood drawn out of my hand, so it was even worse because I was shaking and they couldn't find my veins. But yeah, I think that's what's most important is, being very introspective and knowing what you're going to need.
And someone also just asked a very important question: what is a Centers of Excellence? So I think we all, people who are familiar with those assume that it is common knowledge, but that is a great point to bring up. So thanks for asking that. So a Center of Excellence is recognized by HDSA as a center that provides really multidisciplinary care. So typically staffed by neurologists, social workers, genetic counselors, occupational therapist, speech therapist, physical therapist, nurse, I'm sure I'm leaving someone out, multiple psychiatrists, multiple providers that really address kind of a team approach, one-stop shopping, so to speak, for healthcare and for HD specifically. So there's certain requirements to become a center of excellence. There's application to fill out and showing that you have those resources and services available. So great question. Anyone else have anything to add of their experience with a center?
Yeah, like the cool thing about the centers is like these people, they're hired to work for HD. Like their job is to know HD. I mean, is their knowledge like complete? No, because no one's is. But they're gonna know what they're talking about a lot more than usually like a family practice or like a general neurologist, because there's like a million different things that can be wrong with your brain. So, you know, a general neurologist isn't going to be as much of an expert on one specific disease versus like the COEs, they have a neurologist dedicated to HD. Like that is what they do.
And it's also holistic, so you're not necessarily going to 7 different providers for 7 different issues. It's looking at whatever may be the concern and addressing it from a team approach. So, you know, off the top of my head, an example could be like medication management. Well, a medication might be really good for one aspect, but not really good for another. And so by having the team approach, that's something that the team can work together with the patient and the family to make sure that they're coming up really with a tailored and personalized plan for that individual versus, like I said, going to 5 or 6 different places and being told, well, do this, do this, do this. And then that's great if it was just that one thing, but it's much more intertwined.
And I just wanted to kind of add to this too, is like a center of excellence is not just for like, you know, the diagnosed. It's not for if you're, you know, thinking about testing. Like my mom was going through like, you know, when she, so also I wanted to add, because I had mentioned it might have come off that my mom had tested anonymously. She did not. She was diagnosed through family history. She was already symptomatic when we had brought her to the Center of Excellence. So yes, there were blood draws because she was like doing the study with the COE, but it wasn't like because she had tested anonymously. There was never a testing process per se for her. But I remember going as a child when my mom was diagnosed, and like obviously I don't have to go through these like neurology tests or anything. The social workers were there for me and my sister as children after diagnosis. So it's not just like you go there for one specific like need. You could go for really anything. You know, I was a child going and getting basically counseling by the HDSA social workers to process my mom's diagnosis. And when my mom would go for like her follow-up appointments, me and my sister, as we grew up, my dad did give us the choice on whether or not we wanted to come and be a part of it or not. And I sometimes said no. But when I said yes, and now that I'm a social worker too, and I mingle with all the HDSA social workers, you know, the one that I had worked with when I was like 10 years old had seen me at a previous convention, and she's just like, do you remember when I first met you, the whole entire session you cried? Like, you were just so upset, you were young, you didn't know how to process anything, and then like the next time I saw you at 17, you were educating me. Like, you were telling me everything that I needed to know. And she's like, that's like what we're here for. Like, that's what the Centers of Excellence are for, to like help you through your journey as well.
Did you go to camp before that or not? Or had you already gone?
He asked me if I had gone to the HDO camp prior to that. Yes, shout out. No, this was all before I got involved. Yeah.
Great. So I know we're winding down here. One other question was about the anonymous testing and medical insurance. So do insurance companies have it in their records that you tested anonymously, and do you pay out of pocket to avoid this? So typically, medical insurance is not great with genetic testing, period. Not just HD, but really genetic testing as a whole can be really difficult. And so I know, again, variability among centers, but we typically encourage individuals to pay out of pocket. Some centers have negotiated prices with certain labs that discount it. But if it's self-pay, if you go through insurance, then there's usually a list price that is often double or sometimes even more than that. So we encourage individuals going through predictive testing to definitely self-pay. And some centers are able to use funds from grants that they may have or other resources to help offset, because again, we don't ever want cost. That shouldn't be a barrier for someone who wants the test. So back to the question, if you test anonymously, again, it's good to know what your center, what information they document, because if it is entered into like an electronic medical record, then they very well may scan the report to your chart, but some places will just keep a shadow chart that is totally separate and not a part of your official medical record. So if you ever signed a release or tried to send records elsewhere, those things would not be a part of it. Those would have to be specifically requested from the HD center, if that makes sense. Anything else anyone has to add?
I want to say thank you guys for coming, and I love all you guys. If you don't know me, definitely come up to me. I'm down to converse about our feelings.
Thank you.
Yeah, just hopping off that one. Yes, thank you for all attending. I am a super open book, so if you see me and you have more questions, please come up and ask, because I love talking about HD. So anything you want to know, I'll tell you what you need to know, from my perspective only.
Ditto.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.